Hey everyone! If you enjoyed this video, the full version is available on Patreon. I'll be uploading all my content there going forward. It's currently free, but in the future I'll add a small monthly fee to support the channel. Comment or message me what price feels fair for you. Let's make it comfortable for both sides.
Chapter 1 East Daxia Sea, Psyche Island Naval Base. Look, that good-for-nothing is doing those pointless workouts again. A woman could do this much exercise without even breaking a sweat. I've watched him train like this for 3 years, and it's completely useless. If it weren't for the colonel protecting him, a piece of trash like him would have died at the hands of pirates long ago. 4 or 5 naval soldiers stood to the side, pointing at the white knight not far away and loudly mocking it. Then these people said a few more words, their tone full of disdain. However, Bai Ye seemed not to hear their words and continued squatting as if nothing had happened. After they finished speaking, the group felt bored and dispersed. 98, 99, 100. After doing 100 squats, Bai Ye's legs trembled. He managed to stand up and wipe away the sweat. Phew, only 100 push UPS left. After I finish the push UPS, I can truly activate the system. Thinking of this, Bai Ye's handsome face showed a hint of anticipation, and his eyes shone brightly. I was transported here 3 years ago, and my identity has become the son of a Navy soldier who died in battle. As is standard for transmigrators, Bai Ye naturally also possesses an external cheat system, the One Punch Man Template System. Saitama from One Punch Man is considered to be at the top level of strength in the One Punch Man world. In that world, no one's strength is as distant as billions of galaxies compared to Saitama's. Saitama's full power punch could even pierce through the earth. The speed is so fast that it would only take a few breaths to travel from Earth to the moon. Their fighting prowess far surpasses that of the world of One Piece. This cheat is ridiculously powerful. However, the conditions required to activate the One Punch Man template system are rather unreasonable. Byakuya had to follow Saitama's training regimen: 100 push UPS, 100 sit UPS, 100 squats, and a 10-kilometer run every day. Not more and not less. Furthermore, it requires 3 years of continuous effort to successfully activate the system. For this reason, Bai Ye has been working hard to achieve his training goals for the past 3 years. However, such a level of training would only have a negligible effect in the world of One Piece. Furthermore, due to the system's rules, Byakuya was unable to participate in the training that naval soldiers were supposed to receive. This meant that Bai Ye's strength had barely improved in the past 3 years. However, Colonel Vaughn was mindful of his father's death in the Battle of White Knight, and the fact that White Knight was still a minor. Therefore, Bai Ye was kept at the naval base to protect his safety. Over time, this naturally aroused dissatisfaction among some naval soldiers. Furthermore, Lieutenant Colonel Harry, who had a long-standing feud with Colonel Vaughn, stirred up trouble among the soldiers, causing this discontent to spread throughout the entire Navy division. Of course, Harry did all this not to target White Knight, but simply to incite the soldiers' resentment towards Vaughn. Bai Ye had heard those sarcastic remarks countless times before. From initial anger to current composure, these words forged Bai Ye's incredibly resilient character. For the past 3 years, Bai Ye has always known what he wanted and what he should do. Today, the time for harvest has finally arrived. Last set of exercises: 1, 2, 99, 100. Bai Ye took a deep breath, his eyes flashing with an unusual gleam, and bent down to do 100 push UPS in the most standard posture. At the same time, an ethereal voice echoed in his mind. Ding! One Punch Man template system activated. Host: Bai Ye. Template: One Punch Man, Saitama. Fusion degree: 1%. World source power: 0. Exchange shop not open. Upon hearing the sudden system notification, a glint of light flashed in Bai Ye's dark eyes. What was bound to happen has finally happened. To Bai Ye's disappointment, he had thought that activating the system would grant him Saitama's full power. That's enough power to destroy a star. However, judging from the system panel, he can only currently fuse with 1% of Saitama's strength. Before Bai Ye could think too much, he felt a powerful force suddenly surge from within his body, coursing through his entire being. Bai Ye trembled all over, instantly losing control of his body. He could only let this power reshape his body, his bones being crushed and reshaped, his tendons being torn and then regrown. Fresh blood kept seeping from his pores, quickly soaking his clothes, and in a moment it seemed as if a blood cocoon had enveloped Bai Ye. Aside from his consciousness, Bai Ye's entire body was undergoing a tremendous transformation. Damn it! If I'd known it would hurt this much, I should have finished it in the room. Intense pain relentlessly assaulted Bai Ye's nerves, but he clenched his teeth and made no sound. Bai Ye was still somewhat worried. If others saw this scene, it would probably be troublesome to explain. Fortunately, although the modification process was painful, it was quick and completed in just 1 minute, without being seen by outsiders. After the intense pain subsided, Bai Ye felt an unprecedented sense of fulfillment, a feeling that even gave him a kind of illusion. I am invincible. After a moment, Bai Ye shook his somewhat dizzy head and moved his body slightly. Click! Click! The blood cocoon covering his body began to crack continuously, and his bones cracked like firecrackers exploding. That feels so good. This is the culmination of hardship. Then, Bai Ye carefully looked around and, seeing that no one was around, ran towards his house at top speed. After washing away all the bloodstains and changing into clean clothes, Bai Ye began to ponder matters concerning the system. Bai Ye originally thought that after unlocking the system, he would possess the strength of Saitama at 100%. In the end, only 1% was actually received. However, Bai Ye had anticipated this outcome. Although we don't know exactly how strong this 1% of Saitama's strength is in the world of One Piece. But based on what Bai Ye has learned in the Navy over the past 3 years, he is at least much better than Colonel Vaughn. That's not bad. Moreover, this level of integration should be able to be improved, and the method for improvement might lie in the source energy of that world. Bai Ye immediately inquired with the system. At that moment, the ethereal system notification sounded again. World source power, the degree to which the host participates in changing the original plot of this world, as well as the improvement of personal status, power, and prestige, will increase the world source power. World source energy can be used to increase fusion level, exchange for items, and exchange for subordinate characters. Just as Bai Ye had predicted, the appearance of the world's source power was to help him improve his fusion level. Furthermore, based on the system's explanation of the world's source energy, Bai Ye also has his own understanding. If we consider the development of events in anime to follow a fixed plot line, the appearance of Bai Ye, however, is a variable. This means that the subsequent plot will differ from the original storyline. The greater the change, the more world energy Bai Ye can gain. Moreover, Bai Ye's status, power, and prestige were all taken into account. Therefore, it seems that the acquisition of the world's source power is closely related to every choice Bai Ye makes afterward. A crazy idea popped into Bai Ye's mind. If I were to kill a celestial dragon, wouldn't my reputation on the high seas grow rapidly, allowing me to acquire a large amount of world energy? Thinking of this, a terrifying killing intent flashed in Bai Ye's eyes. If changing the original plot could also grant him a large amount of world source power. What if I kill Luffy? Such a harvest would be even more terrifying. Chapter 2. However, just as Bai Ye was pondering, a chaotic sound suddenly erupted from the base. Then a piercing alarm suddenly blared. Beep! 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 Byakuya saw through the window that many naval soldiers were running out in a panic. Bai Ye's initially joyful expression turned serious. On the island, Once the alarm sounds, it can only mean one thing: pirates are attacking. Bang bang bang! As the knocking sounded, the door was pushed open, and a middle-aged man with a square face entered. The middle-aged man was nearly 2 meters tall and had a burly build. Just looking at him gave off a sense of intimidation. Bai Ye spoke first, asking, "Colonel Vaughn, is there a pirate attack coming?" Colonel Vaughn nodded and said, "The patrol has spotted pirates heading towards our island. We don't know what kind of pirates they are yet. Bai Ye, stay inside the naval base and don't go out, in case anything happens." Whenever pirates attacked the island, Colonel Vaughn would have Bai Ye stay at the naval base. This time is no exception. For this, Bai Ye was very grateful to Colonel Vaughn. If it weren't for Colonel Vaughn's care for him over the past 3 years, he might have died at the hands of pirates long ago. Not to mention activating the system. But this situation will completely change starting today. I, Bai Ye, am very strong now. Colonel Vaughn, let me fight too. Vaughn said seriously, "Hey? Don't be ridiculous." Seeing that Bai Ye was about to speak, Vaughn's expression softened, and he continued, "Your father died at the hands of pirates while saving me. Before he died, he asked me to take good care of you. If something happens to you, how am I supposed to face your father after I die?" Looking at Bai Ye, Vaughn's expression was complicated. It was because of the battle 3 years ago that Bai Ye's father died at the hands of pirates while trying to save him. His right arm was also severed in that battle, and his strength was greatly diminished. If Byakuya had been able to participate in the Navy's training normally over the past 3 years, he would have had some ability to protect himself when facing pirates. He wouldn't oppose it like that. But in the past 3 years, all Vaughn has seen is White Knight's ineffective training. If he were to encounter pirates, he would probably just be sent to his death. Therefore, he no longer expected Bai Ye to become a real naval soldier. Vaughn patted Bai Ye's head with his rough, large hand and sighed softly, "Obey orders and stay in your room." Just as Bai Ye was about to explain the situation to Colonel Vaughn, a sharp voice suddenly rang out from the doorway. "As expected, this is it, Colonel Vaughn. Isn't what you're doing inappropriate?" The newcomer was Lieutenant Colonel Harry, tall and with a gloomy face. He was the second in command of the Navy branch and had never been entirely convinced of Vaughn's appointment. He did almost everything the opposite of what Vaughn wanted. The group that had previously mocked Bai Ye now followed behind Harry, their faces full of disdain. As Harry entered the room, his eyes brazenly scanned Harry's empty right arm without any attempt to conceal them. Ignoring Harry's almost defiant gaze, Vaughn said with a livid face, "Lieutenant Colonel Harry, what do you mean by that?" Harry looked at Bai Ye with a playful expression. "Colonel Vaughn, I remember for the past 3 years, you said you wouldn't let Bai Ye participate in combat because he wasn't yet an adult, right?" Vaughn's expression shifted, as if he had thought of something, and he said in a low voice, "Yes, that's true." Harry clapped his hands, squinted, and smiled, "That's right. If I remember correctly, Bai Ye turned 18 a few days ago, right?" Bai Ye did not refute, because what Harry said was indeed the truth. Upon seeing this, Vaughn couldn't help but sigh inwardly. Seeing that the two remained silent, Harry continued, "So, it's time for Bai Ye to do his part for the Navy, isn't it?" A glint of light flashed in Harry's eyes as he looked at Vaughn. He had no grudge against Bai Ye, he simply wanted to annoy Vaughn. Since Vaughn wanted to protect Bai Ye, he tried every means to put Bai Ye in danger. It's that simple. In his view, a cripple like Vaughn should have been kicked out of his colonel position long ago. If you lack the strength, you should step down as soon as possible. Over the years, through constant targeting of Vaughn, some naval soldiers at the naval base have gradually come to obey only Harry's orders. If it weren't for Colonel Vaughn's seniority and his habit of always being the first to charge into battle against pirates, saving the lives of many soldiers. Some of the older naval sailors still had a lot of faith in Colonel Vaughn. Otherwise, this naval base would have been renamed Harry's long ago. Vaughn looked troubled, took a deep breath, and said, Harry, I know you want to take my place, but you don't need to keep targeting White Knight, Harry interrupted rudely, Colonel Vaughn, I'm just doing my job. Vaughn hesitated for a moment and said, how about this, as long as you don't force Bai Ye to fight the pirates, after this battle, I will submit my resignation to the higher UPS and recommend you for the position of captain at the SCHI Island Naval Branch. Harry paused, perhaps taken aback by the sudden surprise, and asked somewhat uncertainly, are you serious? Vaughn nodded slowly, as if he had made up his mind, as long as you can guarantee Bai Ye's safety, I can. Before Vaughn could finish speaking, Bai Ye declared decisively, I will participate in this battle. Kid, do you know what you're saying? Harry's eyes narrowed, revealing a dangerous aura, like a venomous snake poised to strike, as he stared intently at Bai Ye. Vaughn was also startled by Bai Ye's words and quickly advised, Bai Ye, this is not the time to joke. You should know that even I cannot guarantee my survival when facing pirates. Bai Ye nodded and said, Colonel Vaughn, don't worry. This is my own choice. Besides, I'm already an adult. I can't live under your protection forever. Furthermore, as naval soldiers, defending against pirates is our mission. If even we choose to run away, what will happen to the island's inhabitants? Upon hearing this, Vaughn did not try to persuade him further, he knew that the child before him had completely grown up. All right, now that you're ready, let's fight off the pirates together. He then turned to Harry and yelled, even a kid who's barely an adult understands the meaning of the Navy better than you. Trying to be clever at a time like this? You've wasted the last few decades of your life. Harry's face turned ashen with anger, he hadn't expected the duck he was about to catch to fly away. Seeing Harry's exasperated expression, Bai Ye smiled innocently and said, Lieutenant Colonel Harry, I need to get ready to go to the docks for assembly. I need to pack up a bit. Could you please leave my room first? Harry didn't say anything, but gave Bai Ye a deep look, then turned and left. Although Harry didn't force Vaughn to abdicate this time, his actions weren't a complete failure. He just hadn't expected that Bai Ye, this usually unremarkable brat, would actually say such things. Harry said coldly, Humph. Since you all want to die, then I'll grant your wish. Harry first dismissed his men who were following him, then walked to the shadows around the corner, took out a den mushi from his pocket, and dialed a number. Chapter 3. A moment later, an extremely arrogant voice came from the other end of the phone. Hey! Calling me now, are you trying to change your plans? No, the plan remains the same, but I want Vaughn to die in this attack. The voice on the phone became playful. Ha ha ha, Lieutenant Colonel Harry, are you out of your mind? I'm not your subordinate, you have no right to demand that I do things for you. Besides, what does a fight between you two Marines have to do with a pirate like me? Despite being repeatedly humiliated by the person on the other end of the phone, Harry did not become angry, instead, he remained surprisingly calm. If you kill Vaughn, you'll get 60% of what we get. 60%? Are you trying to fob me off like a beggar? How much do you want? The pirate on the other end of the phone said greedily, I want them all. Even the usually calm Harry was enraged by the pirate's insatiable greed. Veins bulged on his forehead as he gritted his teeth and said, Aren't you going a bit too far? The pirate said calmly, Too much? Since Lieutenant Colonel Harry thinks I've gone too far, then we can terminate our cooperation. I'm taking my men and leaving Sky Island now. You can deal with Vaughn slowly. Upon hearing the pirate's words, Harry immediately calmed down. Although he loathed the pirate's insatiable greed, he now needed the pirate to help him get rid of Vaughn. All right, it's settled then. Blood Wolf, I hope you won't disappoint me. Ha ha ha, just get your stuff ready. If we can't even handle that cripple Vaughn, then my Blood Wolf pirates might as well disband. After hanging up the phone, Harry glanced at Bai Ye's room with a gloomy look. You all forced me to this. Inside the room. Since things had already come to this point, Vaughn didn't try to persuade Bai Ye any further. However, this is Bai Ye's first battle with pirates, so there needs to be some explanation. When we fight the pirates later, don't be stupid and rush in first. And whatever you do, don't go near me. Bai Ye nodded seriously, knowing that as a naval captain, Vaughn would naturally have to deal with the strongest pirates. At that point, the closer you are, the faster you'll die. However, Bai Ye now is completely different from before. Although Bai Ye has never actually made a move, based on his past experiences with Colonel Vaughn, his strength should be above Colonel Vaughn's. Furthermore, after careful consideration, Bai Ye concluded that, according to the anime's plot, the strongest pirate in the East Blue right now is probably Pirate Admiral Krieg, so there shouldn't be any unexpected incidents. Even if it's Krieg, with my current strength, I should be able to take him down completely, right? If I were to unleash my full power, I could definitely give Colonel Vaughn a real fright. Harry and his men will never imagine that I'm stronger than Colonel Vaughn. That's going to be fun. Oh dear, should I go all out at that point? Should I kill him with one punch, or with two? After I make the move, won't it arouse suspicion? This is such a headache. Seeing the constantly changing expression on Bai Ye's face, Vaughn assumed that Bai Ye must be very nervous about facing such vicious pirates for the first time. So he comforted her, "Don't worry, I'll arrange for other soldiers to look after you. Be careful, you'll definitely survive." Bai Ye was completely absorbed in thought and didn't hear what Vaughn was saying, he just nodded subconsciously. Seeing this, Vaughn could only sigh, his eyes filled with guilt. If it weren't for his fight with Harry, perhaps Bai Ye wouldn't have been involved at all, and naturally wouldn't have had to worry about his life later. However, Vaughn had made up his mind that if a life-or-death crisis were to arise, he would die before Bai Ye. Only in this way can he feel a little better. Reaching the door, he turned to look at Bai Ye, who still wore a serious expression, and cleared his throat, saying, "Meet at the dock in half an hour. We'll discuss the details then, you don't need to worry too much right now." "Oh, okay." Bai Ye was clearly distracted at this moment, and replied casually. However, Vaughn didn't care about any of that. As the head of the naval base, he still had a lot to do. Only after Colonel Vaughn left did Bai Ye emerge from his reverie. Although Bai Ye felt that his strength was superior to Colonel Vaughn's, he was not entirely confident. After all, feelings are just feelings. If it comes down to a life-or-death struggle, and Bai Ye only realizes his intuition was wrong when he makes his move, then he'll have nowhere to turn for help. With these thoughts in mind, Bai Ye returned to the training ground. The once bustling training ground was now deserted, with almost all the naval soldiers gathered at the dock. This conveniently facilitates Bai Ye's detection capabilities. Bai Ye took a deep breath, then forcefully threw his right fist towards the eastern wall, leaving an afterimage in the air. A violent gust of wind suddenly appeared and rushed away. The next moment, with a loud boom, the wall collapsed instantly as if struck by a heavy blow, forming a gap more than 3 meters wide. The surrounding walls were covered with spider web-like cracks and were on the verge of collapse. This is so awesome! Bai Ye stared at his hands in disbelief, his face filled with barely suppressed excitement. After being a good-for-nothing for so many years, I've finally turned my life around. When Bai Ye arrived at the dock, all the soldiers from the naval branch were already there. The atmosphere was extremely strange, and the naval soldiers present could be divided into 2 groups. Nearly 70% of the people stood behind Harry, while the remaining 30% stood on Vaughn's side. The sheer number of people in both groups clearly shows that Harry holds the absolute initiative. Although Vaughn was still the head of the naval branch base on Ski Island, he was practically a figurehead. Seeing this, Vaughn could only feel sorrow. If it weren't for the fact that he lost his right arm in a battle with pirates 3 years ago, which significantly reduced his strength. Harry has also steadily improved over the past few years, and his strength has surpassed Vaughn's. Furthermore, they went to great lengths to win over naval soldiers and undermine Vaughn's power. Otherwise, Harry would never have dared to be so arrogant in front of Vaughn. With the pirate ship getting closer and closer on the high seas, Vaughn couldn't care less about these other things. He shouted, "All naval personnel, listen up. Once the enemy ships are within firing range, launch the attack." However, things took an unexpected turn. Apart from the soldiers behind him, Harry's group seemed to be frozen in place, completely unmoved. Chapter 4. Vaughn's face instantly turned as black as the bottom of a pot, his heart filled with rage. He could tolerate all of Harry's disgusting behavior. However, he couldn't accept that Harry was resorting to underhanded tactics when facing such a critical moment as a pirate invasion. Vaughn, his face ashen, snapped, "Harry! What exactly do you mean?" Harry said calmly, "It doesn't mean anything. I just wanted to say that if someone doesn't have the ability, they shouldn't be sitting in a position they shouldn't be in. You see, most naval soldiers understand this principle." A murderous glint flashed in Harry's eyes, and his words were full of threat. However, at this moment, the pirate ship was getting closer and closer. You can even clearly see the blood-red wolf skull and crimson banner hanging on the mast, fluttering in the wind. The bright red mark on the wolf's head looks as if it were drawn with blood. This is the flag of the Blood Wolf Pirates. The Blood Wolves are here. Soldiers who recognized the pirate flag shouted in panic. Upon hearing this, the remaining naval soldiers panicked, and the entire dock descended into chaos. The naval soldiers were terrified, frozen in place, some even unable to hold their guns steady. If a fight were to break out later, given their performance, they might accidentally fire a shot and hit one of their own teammates. Even Vaughn looked somewhat fearful and uneasy, his remaining right arm instinctively gripping the knife at his waist. Seeing the panicked expressions on everyone's faces, Bai Ye asked, puzzled, "This blood wolf, is he very powerful?" Vaughn nodded heavily. "It's not a matter of how powerful he is. Blood Wolf has only been at sea for 3 months, and his bounty has already reached 15 million berries. He's said to be a Zoan-type devil fruit user, ruthless and cruel, slaughtering everyone in the towns he attacked, leaving no survivors. We're really in danger now." An uneasy atmosphere began to spread among the crowd. Bai Ye glanced at the Blood Wolf pirates on the high seas, a thoughtful glint in his eyes. He subconsciously clenched his right fist and muttered, "A character with 15 million berries should be able to withstand one of my punches, right?" Harry's henchman asked anxiously, "Boss, are we really not going to make a move? This is Blood Wolf. That kind of butcher never leaves anyone alive." Harry glanced indifferently at the person who had asked the question, a powerful killing intent emanating from him. "What? Does my word no longer carry weight?" "No. No." The henchman was instantly terrified and broke out in a cold sweat, not daring to utter another word. Harry's expression was uncertain, though he didn't know if taking this step was the right one. But he knew that if he didn't take this step, he would have absolutely no way out. Only with Vaughn's death will he have a chance to become a Navy branch captain. The Blood Wolves' sudden attack, along with their strategy of garnering nearly 70% of the naval soldiers to remain neutral, was all aimed at ensuring Vaughn's death in this battle. After Vaughn dies, Blood Wolf will surely be injured. He can then seize the opportunity to kill Blood Wolf, demonstrating his strength and consolidating his prestige. In that case, even if we don't intervene beforehand, as long as we successfully kill the Blood Wolf in the end, no one can say anything. This plan kills 2 birds with 1 stone. As for the previous statement that all the looted supplies would be given to Blood Wolves, that was just empty talk. Once Blood Wolf dies, will those things still need to be burned for him? However, just as Harry was making his plans, a shout came from the direction of the Blood Wolf pirates. "Lieutenant Colonel Harry, Didn't you say we'd join forces against Vaughn? I'm here now, aren't you going to make a statement? Blood Wolf's arrogant words immediately spread throughout the entire coastline. What? Lieutenant Colonel Harry, is this true? No way. A commotion arose among the naval soldiers. Damn it, Blood Wolf is a complete idiot. Harry cursed inwardly, his expression unchanged. If Blood Wolf hadn't spoken up, Harry could have taken advantage of the chaos to minimize his own losses. Now, everything's been exposed. Although Blood Wolf's words now have a divisive tone, they force everyone to consider the veracity of his statements. However, Vaughn, who knew Harry best, combined Blood Wolf's words with what had happened before, and was almost certain that what Blood Wolf said was 99% true. Vaughn could no longer stand it, so he strode forward and grabbed Harry by the collar. He glared angrily and shouted, "Is this all true?" Harry grabbed Vaughn's arm and with a sudden burst of strength, flung Vaughn's right hand away. He slowly and deliberately straightened his wrinkled collar, and said calmly, "What is real? What is fake? Now that pirates are attacking, you actually doubt me, a fellow Marine, because of what the pirates say? I'm telling you, Blood Wolf, everything he said is a lie. Would you believe me?" Vaughn said in a deep voice, "I'm willing. As long as you and I work together to resist the Blood Wolf pirates, I can pretend none of this ever happened." Just as Harry was about to reply, Blood Wolf's arrogant words came again. "Lieutenant Colonel Harry, if you don't make a move soon, I'm turning around and leaving." Harry's expression changed, and he said coldly, "I'm not involved in this." "Harry!" Vaughn exclaimed in shock, his eyes wide with disbelief, "You actually colluded with pirates?" Harry interrupted him bluntly, "Colonel Vaughn needs to provide evidence. Which eye of yours saw me colluding with pirates? When the post-war report is written, it will only state that Colonel Vaughn died in an attack by the Blood Wolves pirates, while Lieutenant Colonel Harry led the naval soldiers to successfully repel the Blood Wolves pirates." "You?" Vaughn's eyes were bloodshot. If the Blood Wolf pirates weren't right in front of him, he would have killed Harry first. Blood Wolf looked at the chaotic scene among the naval soldiers on the shore and revealed a smug smile. Harry used him as a tool, but he also used Harry as a tool. If he were to face Harry and Vaughn alone, he would have almost no chance of winning. But now things are less certain. You see, Scythia Island is considered relatively wealthy among the surrounding islands, and Blood Wolf has been eyeing it for a long time. Let's deal with Vaughn first. Even if Harry tries to double-cross us, we'll see who has the stronger hand. Blood Wolf doesn't think he'll lose. The situation has now become clear. It's now obvious that Harry and Blood Wolf are teaming up to get rid of Vaughn. The disparity in strength between the two sides is too great. Vaughn's current situation is so dire that even saying he's in a life-or-death predicament is an understatement. Even at this point, Harry didn't forget to further harass Vaughn, threatening the soldiers behind him. "After all, we're all in the Navy. I can give you a chance to live. As long as you stand in the ranks behind me, I can save your lives." Chapter 5. Even if some soldiers were unwilling to associate with pirates, in this situation, their only option for survival was to join Harry's side. Furthermore, Lieutenant Colonel Harry did not state that he had joined forces with the Blood Wolves, and since Lieutenant Colonel Harry was the second in command of the naval base, joining forces with him would not be considered a betrayal of the Navy. With this self-deceiving idea in mind, many people made their choice immediately. The people behind Harry remained motionless, while nearly 20% of the soldiers behind Vaughn ran up to Harry's side. Some of those who left stood at the very back of Harry's group, not daring to look up at Vaughn, while others looked relieved, as if happy to have escaped a disaster. In a short time, less than 10% of the soldiers remained behind Vaughn, almost all of them were veterans who had followed Vaughn over the years. Vaughn watched the soldiers leave, his expression complex and somewhat dejected, but he did not offer any words of advice. He has no right to make others give up their lives to follow him. Harry looked at the dejected Vaughn and laughed wildly, Ha ha ha, you made the right choice, because only this way can you save your lives. For Harry, the current situation is becoming increasingly favorable. Bai Ye sighed as he looked at the complicated situation before him. Everyone thinks they're on the second level, while others are on the first. Harry and the Blood Wolf were scheming against each other, but in reality, White Knight was standing on the 5th floor. If you are strong enough, no amount of scheming will work. At this moment, Harry noticed White Knight still standing behind Vaughn and couldn't help but speak up sarcastically. Hey kid, you're still standing next to Vaughn? Looks like you're really not afraid of death. I remember this was your first time in combat, right? Do you know what death feels like? Have you ever experienced the sensation of a bullet entering your body? You're still young, you have a long and wonderful youth to squander, there's no need to follow Vaughn, a dying man. If you're willing to follow me, I can guarantee you'll live a good life, at the very least, you won't die young. After saying that, Harry looked at Vaughn with amusement. Harry knew that Vaughn treated Bai Ye extremely well, and if even Bai Ye chose to betray Vaughn at a time like this was undoubtedly a heavy blow for Vaughn. Vaughn sighed, looked at the somewhat immature White Knight behind him, and said with a heavy heart, Harry is right, you are still young, you don't need to die with a cripple like me. Go and seek refuge with Harry. After I die, Harry won't be interested in targeting you anymore, and you can choose to live a normal life. Harry tempted, that's right. For your life, White Knight, you should join me. At the very least, you can survive if you follow me. Listening to their conversation, Bai Ye seemed to have made her decision and slowly walked towards Harry's direction. The veterans behind Vaughn muttered under their breath, ungrateful wretch. Colonel Vaughn has been so good to you, and you actually chose to betray him at such a crucial moment. White Knight, do you think you can survive by siding with Harry? Vaughn watched Bai Ye's retreating figure with a hint of heartache in his eyes, but he also breathed a sigh of relief and stopped the old people behind him from speaking. Harry laughed even more triumphantly, ha ha ha, Vaughn, look at this, even White Knight, whom you've taken care of for so many years, has chosen to betray you. You're such a terrible naval captain. Just as the two sides were arguing, Bai Ye, who was halfway there, suddenly stopped. Bai Ye said calmly, Lord Harry, don't you think you look like a clown? I was still figuring out what reason to use to kill you, but you delivered the reason right to my doorstep. Conspiring with pirates to murder a naval captain, such a grave crime, even killing you on the spot wouldn't be too much of a crime, would it? After Bai Ye said this, the entire room fell silent. Harry looked into Bai Ye's calm, still eyes and felt a strange unease creep into his heart. Vaughn was also taken aback by Bai Ye's arrogant words. Harry's lackey stepped forward, pointed a gun at Bai Ye, and sneered, "Ha, you piece of trash, dare to talk big? If Lieutenant Colonel Harry hadn't spared your life, believe me, I'd kill you right now." Before he could finish speaking, Bai Ye suddenly exerted force with both legs, and with a boom, 2 craters appeared on the ground. His figure disappeared from everyone's sight. White Knight was so fast that she was just a blur, even Harry couldn't pinpoint her location. The next second, Harry felt a warm sensation on his right cheek, and mechanically turned his head to look. The soldier who had spoken earlier was now a headless corpse. The warm sensation on my face was from blood splattered on it. The blood mist, carried by the sea breeze, settled on the faces of 90% of the soldiers behind them. The headless corpse collapsed with a thud. A deathly silence fell over the scene. No one expected that Bai Ye, who was usually seen as a good-for-nothing, was actually so powerful. Mr. Harry, didn't you teach him that children shouldn't interrupt adults? Bai Ye stood beside Harry, a harmless smile on his face, a few drops of scarlet blood splattered on his fair skin, making him look extremely terrifying. How is this possible? Harry instinctively took a few steps back, uttering these words in a trembling voice, as if he had used up all his strength. How can you be so strong? Not only Harry, but even Vaughn was dumbfounded, and even wondered if he was dreaming. Based on the strength Bai Ye just displayed, even I at my peak probably wouldn't be a match for him. At this point, Harry seemed to realize something, turned to Vaughn, and said sharply, "Vaughn, you knew about White Knight's strength all along, didn't you? So this was all part of your plan. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. You, who have always been reckless and impulsive, have actually learned to keep a secret." Vaughn was completely bewildered by Harry's words, looking utterly lost. Yet, holy crap, so I knew about Bai Ye's strength all along. Was all of this really orchestrated by me? Or am I dreaming? Harry wasn't the only one who thought this way, even the old people behind Vaughn shared the same idea. Lord Vaughn, you are truly a man of great skill. No wonder the adults didn't stop those people from leaving earlier, they wanted to see who would choose to leave at the crucial moment. What a brilliant plan! Frank, I remember you just called Bai Ye an ingrate, didn't you? Frank glared at the speaker, wishing he could kick him on the spot, then quickly explained, how was I supposed to know that Lord Vaughn arranged all of this? Ignorance is no excuse. Besides, doesn't my cursing make it seem more real? To be honest, after witnessing Bai Ye's strength, Frank was actually a little apprehensive. He was afraid that Bai Ye was petty and might hold a grudge against him for scolding him. What if Bai Ye really came looking for trouble? As they continued chatting, the atmosphere gradually eased, and they were no longer as fearless as before. The situation began to subtly change. Chapter 6. White Knight's strength was unexpectedly high, but the plan had already progressed this far, and Harry had to continue executing it no matter what. He had no way out. Harry screamed in a piercing voice, "Vaughn, I didn't want to do this, you forced me to." "I forced you? What did I do? I didn't even say a word, and you're blaming everything on me? Isn't that a bit unreasonable? And you all say it was me who arranged it. What the hell did I arrange? I didn't even know Bai Ye was this strong." Vaughn was completely bewildered and remained utterly confused. Bai Ye found Vaughn's expression amusing, but he didn't intend to explain anything. Let everyone think he's Vaughn's backup plan. That way, even if he shows his full strength, everyone will only suspect Vaughn. No one would ask Bai Ye about this. In other words, Vaughn is definitely going to take the blame. At this point, Harry realized that if he didn't act soon, he would only be waiting to die. So he ordered his men, "Everyone, move out. Take care of Bai Ye first." He then shouted towards the coast, "Blood Wolf, I've made my move as agreed, you should too." Hearing Harry's somewhat anxious voice and looking at the chaotic shoreline, Blood Wolf's face revealed a bloodthirsty smile. "My lords, prepare to reap the spoils of victory." The pirates on the Blood Wolf ship were all stained with the blood of several people. Upon hearing that they could begin killing, they became excited, their eyes bloodshot. "Don't worry, boss. I've been itching to kill someone for days. Murder is something we're experts at." The first mate beside Blood Wolf asked in a low voice, "Boss, should we kill all the Marines?" Blood Wolf said calmly, "Take care of Vaughn's navy first, then deal with Harry's navy." "But, boss, didn't you and Harry make a promise?" Blood Wolf glanced at the first mate and said disdainfully, "We're pirates. Are we supposed to stick to our agreement with the navy? If we're going to do something, let's do something big. Once we've taken care of both sides, the entire island of Sky will be ours." The first mate nodded and said nothing more, then began to arrange for his men to prepare for the attack. "Sure." At Harry's command, hundreds of naval soldiers pointed their guns at the White Knight in the center. Hundreds of dark gun barrels, just looking at them is enough to send chills down your spine. However, Bai Ye remained unmoved, his young face showing no sign of panic. Ironically, the attacking pirates were just a short distance away at sea, while the Marines on the shore were pointing their guns at Byakuya, who was also a Marine. This scene made Vaughn feel a pang of sadness, but he was also worried about Bai Ye's safety. Vaughn spoke up to stop him. Harry, don't make another mistake. If you're willing to fight the pirates with me, then I can pretend this never happened. When Harry heard that Vaughn was willing to let him go, he was first taken aback, then he sneered. Vaughn, do you really think you've got this in the bag? I didn't expect Bai Ye to be so strong, you've been hiding your strength very well. Upon hearing this, Vaughn rolled his eyes at Harry, thinking to himself, I'm hiding it well? You think I'm hiding it? You're kidding me. But I have nearly 300 soldiers on my side, and with me, taking down Bai Ye shouldn't be a problem. With the Blood Wolf pirates on board, I have no chance of losing. And you're actually trying to persuade me to surrender? Looks like you're still an idiot, just like before. Seeing that Harry was determined, and looking at the White Knights surrounded by enemies, Vaughn knew he couldn't wait any longer. We must rescue Bai Ye before the Blood Wolf pirates land. Otherwise, if attacked from both sides, they would be unable to withstand it. Prepare to act. We must find a way to rescue Bai Ye before the Blood Wolf pirates attack. Frank and his friends stopped joking and their expressions became serious. Harry quickly retreated, putting distance between himself and Bai Ye, and sneered, Kid, you are strong, even stronger than me, but you can't possibly be stronger than 300 of us. Harry roared, do it. More than 300 soldiers fired at Bai Ye simultaneously. The dark muzzles flashed with dazzling light, and orange-yellow bullets surged towards Bai Ye like a torrent. But then a scene that left everyone speechless unfolded. Bai Ye moved with the agility of an eel, dodging countless bullets. Monster! He's not human. He's not Bai Ye. The traitorous soldiers had never seen such a scene before, they were all terrified out of their wits by Bai Ye. Bai Ye appeared in front of Harry in the blink of an eye, sneering, numbers are utterly insignificant in the face of absolute power. Harry stared in shock at the ghostly White Knight before him, but his years of combat experience allowed him to react. Harry drew his sword from his waist and brought it down heavily, gritting his teeth. Kid, are you looking for death? Bai Ye raised his left hand high and grabbed the sword, sneering, I think you're the one courting death. Harry's arms were bulging with veins as he tried to pull the sword from Bai Ye's hand. But the sword seemed to be rooted to the ground in White Knight's hand. No matter how hard Harry tried, it wouldn't budge. Harry was so anxious that his face turned red. You want it? Bai Ye smiled broadly, then suddenly exerted force with his left hand, crushing the sword blade in two, sending sharp fragments flying through the air. The sword suddenly shattered, and Harry had no time to stop, falling backward. Then I'll return it to you. White Knight picked out the larger piece from the debris in the air, gripped it in his right hand, tensed his muscles, and threw it directly at Harry. The fragment moved as fast as a streak of light, instantly passing through Harry's body and blasting a crater nearly a meter deep into the ground. The ground trembled slightly, and dust filled the air. When the smoke cleared, Harry lay lifeless on the ground, a bowl-sized wound ripped open in his heart. His eyes were wide open, his expression a mixture of terror and confusion. Perhaps even until the moment of his death, he still couldn't understand why Bai Ye, with such immense strength, would endure 3 years of humiliation at the hands of others. Only today have I chosen to unleash my full potential. Unfortunately, no one will answer this question for him. But this might be a good thing for Harry. If he knew that Bai Ye had indeed been a useless piece of trash for the past 3 years, without any real strength. It just so happens that the system was successfully activated today, granting me immense power. However, he chose to join forces with the Blood Wolf pirates to attack Vaughn at this time, directly running into Bai Ye's line of fire. This is truly a case of a clever mother opening the door for a clever person. It's incredibly clever. If Harry knew the truth, he'd probably be so angry he'd come back to life on the spot. Chapter 7. From the moment he emerged from White Knight Station and walked towards Harry to the moment he successfully killed him, less than 5 minutes had passed. But within those 5 minutes, the situation changed dramatically. Everyone's emotions were like a roller coaster ride, going up and down. Previously, Vaughn's side was lying in wait while Harry's side was rising up, now it's Vaughn's side rising up while Harry's side is lying in wait. Seeing that White Knight killed Harry in seconds, even Blood Wolf, known for his bloodlust and brutality, couldn't help but gasp in shock. He cursed inwardly, couldn't that idiot Harry have done his research first? And you even dragged me into this. He deserved to be killed. Blood Wolf knew that with Harry dead, he probably wouldn't be a match for that guy even with his own strength. With that old BD Vaughn still around, going up there would just be suicide. Seeing the situation was turning against them, Blood Wolf didn't hesitate for a moment and immediately shouted, "Quickly, turn around and get out of here." "Yes, yes. Turn around immediately." Even Blood Wolf was so afraid, his pirate crew must have been terrified long ago. Just as the boat was about to reach the shore, it suddenly made a 180-degree turn and sped away in the opposite direction. Previously, they hoped the ship could sail faster so they could land as soon as possible, slaughter the navy, and loot the money. Now I wish I could sprout wings and get as far away as possible from that dangerous man. This can't be described as I've already taken my pants off, but my girlfriend says, I'm on my period. Instead, you've taken your pants off, taken a shower, and packed all your gear, only to find that the woman lying in bed isn't your tender girlfriend to be pampered, but a ferocious female ghost. You must have a very strong mentality to have survived this. On the shore, the soldiers who had previously chosen Harry's side were all terrified and fell silent, not daring to breathe. At that moment, a clear, ethereal voice suddenly echoed in Bai Ye's mind. Gain 1 point of world source power. Is this okay? Bai Ye was stunned. He hadn't expected that killing trash like Harry would bring him world source power. What a pleasant surprise! Bai Yexuan then turned his gaze to the traitorous soldiers. A lieutenant colonel like Harry only has 1 point of world source energy, these soldiers combined probably don't have much world source energy either. Even a small mosquito is still meat. Bai Ye felt no qualms about killing such a traitor. This is all precious world energy. The more than 300 marines who were surrounded by Bai Ye seemed to sense the killing intent emanating from him. Considering Bai Ye's terrifying strength, they were so frightened that they could not even stand up straight. Just as Bai Ye was about to make his move, he heard Vaughn shout, "Damn it, Blood Wolf is trying to escape." Bai Ye turned his head and saw that the pirate ship was getting farther and farther away. Originally, Bai Ye didn't care that the Blood Wolf pirates had run away, he simply didn't bother chasing them. However, killing can also grant access to the world's source power, so we can't let the Blood Wolf escape. Colonel Vaughn, keep a close eye on these people who are colluding with pirates. Don't let them escape. Leave Blood Wolf to me. Vaughn nodded and said, "That's no problem. It's just that the Blood Wolves are several miles away from us. If we set sail now to chase after them, I'm afraid we won't be able to catch up, right?" Having witnessed Bai Ye's strength, Vaughn felt much more at ease with him. Bai Ye was no longer the child he needed to worry about. Bai Ye laughed, "That's easy." Leaning forward, using the strength of both legs, he was launched into the air like a cannonball. The moment Bai Ye stood up, the ground trembled slightly, and waves rippled on the nearby sea. This is incredible. This kid's strength is ridiculously high. Vaughn stared in disbelief at Bai Ye's disappearing figure. Then, after a moment's thought, he considered it carefully and said, "How come this kid is so strong? Could it be due to Bai Ye's training methods? I'll try it when I get back, and while I'm at it, I'll promote this method and see if I can cultivate a few strong individuals." Blood Wolf turned to look at the receding Sky Island, and the unease in his heart gradually subsided. "Damn it, I didn't expect there to be such a strong person in the navy. Luckily, I ran fast." Blood Wolf said with a look of relief. The first mate said with lingering fear, "Yes. Who would have thought there would be such a formidable person on Skid Island? A wasted trip, gained absolutely nothing, and almost lost my life. In all my years at sea, when have I ever suffered such a loss? One of his men stepped forward and asked, "Boss, where are we going now?" "I'll just find any nearby island, I'm seething with anger right now and need to vent it." Blood Wolf waved his hand impatiently, his face filled with barely suppressed madness. He actually caught up with us." Just then, his subordinates suddenly let out a blood-curdling scream. Dozens of pirates screamed like frightened girls, their faces pale. Anyone who didn't know better would think they were innocent victims. Blood Wolf turned to look at the sky, his pupils contracting slightly. A tiny dark shadow blocked the direct sunlight. Upon closer inspection, the dark figure was none other than White Knight, who had killed Harry in the previous 3 seconds. Even the most ruthless and bloodthirsty wolf felt immense fear upon witnessing such a swift death. Blood Wolf roared, "Damn it! That brat dared to chase us! Tell the helmsman to turn around immediately and accelerate to maximum speed. Quick! Quick! Change direction!" The entire ship instantly changed direction and began moving at full speed to the right. Bai Ye sneered, "Run? Not a single one of them will escape." As he fell, one foot slammed heavily onto the water, sending a water column several meters high into the air, and he was lifted into the air once more. Seconds later, Bai Ye landed at the bow of the ship, and with a bang, the entire ship was almost capsized by Bai Ye. As the Blood Wolf pirates watched White Knight appear, a terrifying sense of despair eroded their reason. With each step Bai Ye took, the pirates retreated a step in terror. Each step felt like a trampling on their hearts, terrifying them to the core. "You, don't come any closer. If you come any closer, we're going to take action." Blood Wolf forced a calm expression and said, "What exactly do you want? I didn't attack you, so why are you chasing me?" Bai Ye smiled and said, "Because you are all invaluable assets. Wealth." Blood Wolf's eyes lit up, and he said with a pained expression, "I'm willing to give you all the treasure on the ship, I just hope you'll spare our lives." In Blood Wolf's view, saving his life was more important than anything else. "As long as I'm alive, I can just go back and get those lost palace back. It's not impossible that they might even avenge today's grievances." Chapter 8. If he could, Blood Wolf would even like to take out all the treasure and get White Knight off his ship as soon as possible. Amidst the expectant gazes of the pirates, Bai Ye slowly shook his head and said, "No, to me, your greatest wealth isn't Pele, it's your lives." As he spoke, a blur flashed by, and the pirates in front of him instantly exploded into a cloud of blood mist. Blood Wolf roared, "Brothers, charge!" Knowing that Bai Ye wouldn't let them go, all the pirates unleashed their previously suppressed ferocity and swarmed towards Bai Ye. Blood Wolf also activated his devil fruit power without hesitation, transforming into a werewolf, which was his strongest form. Its body swelled up like a balloon, bursting all its clothes. Grayish-white hair grew wildly, covering its face and leaving only a pair of clear yellow vertical pupils, making it look extremely eerie. The fingernails on all 10 fingers were over 30 centimeters long, resembling 10 daggers, gleaming with a dazzling cold light in the sunlight. However, instead of attacking together with his subordinates, he first had them weaken Bai Ye's strength, while he waited for an opportunity to strike. With each punch Bai Ye throws, a pirate dies on the spot, no one can stop him for even a moment. When Bai Ye appeared before Blood Wolf, the deck was littered with corpses. The floor was soaked in blood, like a scene from hell. Blood Wolf watched as Bai Ye approached, but instead of attacking immediately, he pleaded, "What will it take for you to let me go? If you spare my life, I can cooperate with you, and I'll hand over all the treasure I plunder. I've said it before, to me, your life is the most valuable thing." Bai Ye drew closer, his smile as innocent and harmless as that of a boy next door. Blood Wolf knew he was outmatched, but under these circumstances, he had no choice but to fight to the death. Since you're not willing to let me go, then die. Blood Wolf struck first, its claws digging into the ground and tearing through the deck. His body suddenly appeared to Bai Ye's left, and his right hand, with its sharp wolf claws, drew 5 silver-white arcs at an extremely strange angle towards Bai Ye. Go to hell! Blood Wolf sneered. Bai Ye's eyes narrowed slightly, and for a moment he could feel the coolness on his skin, along with a slight stinging sensation. It seems that this 1% of strength will only allow me to have a certain degree of self-defense in the weakest part of the East Daxia Sea. I must quickly increase my fusion level. The wolf's claws sliced through the white knight before it, passing right through its body without any obstruction. However, the scene of blood splattering that Blood Wolf had anticipated did not occur. Is that just a remnant of that guy? Where has he gone to hide now? A terrifying thought suddenly popped into Blood Wolf's mind, and then, as if seeing a ghost, he desperately tried to leave the spot he had just been in. Only Bai Ye's cold voice rang out from behind. His eyes were devoid of any emotion as he said indifferently, "I hope your value is greater." At this moment, Blood Wolf truly realized just how vast the difference in strength between the two sides really was. Before Blood Wolf could even react, a huge hole had formed in his chest, and flesh and blood flew everywhere. Only after killing the Blood Wolf did Bai Ye have the mind to look at the system notifications that kept ringing in his mind. Gain 0.01 points of World Source Power. Gain 0.02 points of World Source Power. Gain 0.01 points of World Source Power. Gain 2 points of World Source Power. 0.01? 2? That's far too little. Even if Blood Wolf isn't the best, he's still a devil fruit user, with a bounty of 15 million berries. Bai Ye frowned as he opened the system panel. Host, Bai Ye. Template, One Punch Man, Saitama. Fusion Degree, 1%. World Source Power, 4. Exchange Shop not open. For a moment, Bai Ye even suspected that the system might have taken a kickback. Good heavens, they killed 50 or 60 people for only 4 points of World Source Power. Is human life really that worthless? System, how much World Source Power do I need to increase the fusion level and unlock the exchange shop? Fusion level 1%, 2%, requires 10 World Source Power. To open the exchange shop, you need to spend 100 World Source Points. Seeing this huge number, Bai Ye felt a sharp pain in his trigeminal nerve. This has been quite a long journey. Fortunately, Bai Ye's current strength is sufficient. There's no need to rush. Subsequently, Bai Ye discovered over 20 million berries and treasure worth 7 to 8 million berries in Blood Wolf's bedroom. Tisk tisk, even trash like this can plunder so much wealth, no wonder most people want to be pirates. With a wave of his hand, he stored Bailey and the treasure into the system space. He then sank the ship with a few more punches and returned to Skip Hall Island. Seeing Bai Ye return so quickly, Vaughn was somewhat surprised and took the initiative to greet him. Is everything resolved? Yes, kill them all. Bai Ye nodded. Upon hearing this, Vaughn was secretly alarmed. He had thought that if Bai Ye chased after them, he would be lucky to kill a few small fry, considering that it was a complete pirate crew. But to everyone's surprise, Bai Ye chased after them and killed them all, not a single one escaped. Bai Ye ignored Vaughn's expression and instead pointed to the more than 300 naval soldiers being watched, asking, "What are you planning to do with these guys?" Upon hearing that they were to be punished, many soldiers pleaded for mercy. "Colonel Vaughn, I've followed you since I joined the Navy, and I've killed over a dozen pirates. Please spare me this time." "Colonel, I was deceived by Harry and made a mistake in choosing to follow him. Please give me another chance." "Yes, my family is still on the island, my child is only 3 years old, and I also want to protect the island's inhabitants." Hearing the soldier's plea, Vaughn looked troubled, paused for a moment, and said, I haven't thought about it yet. After all, they are soldiers who have trained together for many years. We fought alongside pirates before, which was beneficial to Scythe Island. Upon hearing Vaughn's words, the more than 300 soldiers breathed a sigh of relief, their faces showing expressions of relief. Especially after following Harry for so many years, and witnessing his occasional humiliation of Bai Ye and others, he felt incredibly lucky. Several of them looked up at Bai Ye, their eyes flashing with fear mixed with a hint of resentment. In their view, if it weren't for Bai Ye suddenly displaying astonishing strength and killing Harry, how did they end up in their current predicament? But when Bai Ye looked at those people, they quickly lowered their heads, afraid that Bai Ye would see their dissatisfaction. Bai Ye withdrew his gaze and smiled, "Colonel Vaughn, since you don't know how to handle this, then let me handle it, how about it?" After a moment's thought, Vaughn said, "I am indeed a bit tired now, so I'll leave this matter to you to decide." "Don't worry, I'll handle it." Chapter 9. Bai Ye walked slowly toward the guarded soldiers, a bloodthirsty smile on his face. He coldly ordered, "Open fire. Kill them all." "What?" Everyone present looked at Bai Ye with disbelief. Even Vaughn, who had already left, stopped in his tracks. "This, Bai Ye, are we really going to kill them all?" The soldiers in charge of the operation were stunned. These soldiers might have been joking and laughing with them just yesterday. Today, I will kill them all. This sense of disparity is not something everyone can accept. Bai Ye retorted sarcastically without any politeness, "If it weren't for me standing up and killing Harry, you would be the ones having your lives decided by others right now. Do you think they would spare your lives back then? I can't believe you're still hesitating. I really don't know what to say." Bai Ye's words were clearly heard by everyone. Vaughn knew that White Knight was right. If Harry won this time, just because they knew that Harry and his friends were colluding with pirates, Harry would never let them go. Knowing this, Vaughn still couldn't bring himself to kill all 300 plus soldiers, since some of them had family members still on Skiphall Island. If they were really executed, how would Vaughn face their families? Ahem. Bai Ye, come here for a moment. Looking at Vaughn's conflicted expression, Bai Ye knew that Vaughn couldn't bring himself to be ruthless. "Bai Ye, are you really going to execute them all?" "Of course, they've all betrayed us before. If they can betray once, they can betray again. Keeping them around will only cause trouble. It's better to get rid of them this time. But if we kill them all, our navy's strength will be reduced by more than half. If pirates invade again, then we..." As Vaughn spoke, he realized something was amiss. As long as Bai Ye was there, it wouldn't make much difference whether the navy was on the island or not. When Vaughn looked up and saw Bai Ye's expression wanting to laugh but holding it back, he immediately smacked Bai Ye on the back of the head in an annoyed tone. "So this kid understands everything. He knows I can't bring myself to kill everyone, and he's just waiting to see me make a fool of myself. Bai Ye, tell me honestly, are you really going to eliminate them all?" Bai Ye nodded, but seeing Vaughn's conflicted expression, he couldn't help but say, "Colonel Vaughn, if you really can't bear it, we can kill only some and let the others go. Those who followed Harry from the very beginning will definitely be dealt with. As for those who chose to follow Harry earlier, we could let them atone for their crimes through meritorious service. What do you think of that?" After thinking about it for a moment, Vaughn felt that this was fairly reasonable, since people always have to pay the price for their choices. After Bai Ye left, Vaughn quickly blew on his slightly swollen right hand, his face contorted in pain, and said, "That kid's head is FG hard, it hurts like hell." In front of the imprisoned soldiers, Bai Ye specifically asked Colonel Vaughn to plead for them, which is why he was willing to let go of those who followed Harry. This made the soldiers extremely grateful to Vaughn, and they promised to obey his orders properly from now on. This made Vaughn happy and somewhat gratified, as it was, after all, Bai Ye's good intention. Now, the remaining detainees were all in a panic. Even so, some people stood up to resist. "Brothers, we're all going to die anyway, might as well fight. Bang! A bullet pierced the speaker's mouth, killing him instantly. Bai Ye tossed the gun, still emitting a thin layer of smoke, to the soldier beside him. Kill them all! After Bai Ye finished speaking, even though the soldiers looked somewhat reluctant, they still raised their guns. They were aimed at these people who were their companions just an hour ago. The sound of gunfire was deafening, and blood blossomed everywhere. The system's notification sounds are the same. Gain 0.01 points of world source power. Gain 0.02 points of world source power. Gain 0.03 points of world source power. That's because I ordered them to be killed, so it counts as world source power, even if I didn't personally do it. In that case, the possibilities are vast. Host, Bai Ye. Template, One Punch Man, Saitama. Fusion Degree, 1%. World Source Power, 6. Exchange Shop not open. Gaining 6 points of World Source Power in less than a day is quite a considerable achievement. Bai Ye closed the system panel and muttered to himself. Now we need to plan the way forward. Upon first acquiring the system, I learned how to obtain the world's source power. Bai Ye then made a plan in his mind. After experiencing this day, Bai Ye became even clearer about her future path. That is to become stronger and seize power. To become the most powerful person in the entire pirate world. Anyone who disagrees will be crushed with a single punch. A single word can decide the life or death of countless people. Only in this way can Bai Ye obtain more of the world's source power. Has not yet appeared. The 5 elders and the celestial dragons who claim to be gods are currently the most powerful figures. But in reality, Bai Ye didn't think so. As the saying goes, might makes right. Which celestial dragon dares to swagger in front of the 4 emperors? The reason why the 4 emperors of the sea can live freely in the new world is because they are powerful enough. However, the most powerful force is not the 4 emperors' pirate crews, but the navy, which is controlled by the world government. One marine is worth at least 2 Yonko pirate crews. This massive military force can only obey the orders of the world government. What a waste! Thinking of this, a terrifying light flashed in Bai Ye's eyes. If he was going to do something, he would do something big. Find a way to bring the entire navy under your control. The next day, early morning, Vaughn gathered all the naval soldiers on the parade ground. In front of everyone, it was announced that Bai Ye had been promoted to Navy Lieutenant. At the same time, the system's voice also sounded in Bai Ye's mind. Congratulations, host, on becoming a private first class. You have gained 0.5 points of world source power. Congratulations, host, on becoming a private first class and gaining 1 point of world source power. Congratulations, host, on becoming a private first class and gaining 1.5 points of world source power. Congratulations, host, on becoming a corporal. You have gained 2 points of world source power. Congratulations, host, on becoming a sergeant and gaining 3 points of world source power. Congratulations, host, on becoming a sergeant. You have gained 5 points of world source power. Congratulations, host, on becoming a captain. You have gained 10 points of world source power. He jumped 7 levels in a row, gaining a total of 23 points of world source power. It's simply because Bai Ye's status in the Navy has risen, allowing him to acquire world source energy at a speed even more direct than killing someone. However, Bai Ye's status can be elevated. This was also because he killed Blood Wolf, whose bounty was 15 million berries. This is a double win. This sudden windfall further solidified Bai Ye's resolve from yesterday. Chapter 10. After the meeting, Vaughn pulled Bai Ye aside. Last night, I reported everything that happened here. It's said that Vice Admiral Anigamo is very interested in you and is willing to recommend you to the Marine Headquarters Elite Training Camp. So let me ask for your opinion. Anigamo, a lieutenant general in the headquarters, is among the top lieutenant generals in terms of strength. He is considered a hawkish figure in Akainu's faction, and his methods are ruthless. Bai Ye directly eliminated over 100 traitorous soldiers, which suited the hawkish general's tastes perfectly. Therefore, Bai Ye was not surprised by this. An elite training camp. Seeing Bai Ye's hesitation, Vaughn quickly explained, "Don't underestimate this elite training camp. Many high-ranking naval officers come from there. The current 3 admirals are the most obvious example. And the instructor there is none other than former General Blackarm Zephyr. With your talent and Zephyr's guidance, you might just be the next Marine Admiral." Although Vaughn praised the elite training camp to the skies. But for Bai Ye, it wasn't really that appealing. In terms of Bai Ye's strength, his improvement mainly relies on the integration with the system. As long as he obtains a large amount of world source power, his strength can be improved rapidly. Instead of playing childish games at the elite naval training camp, it's better to kill pirates and find a way to advance your rank. Colonel Vaughn, to be honest, I'm not very interested in the Navy elite training camp. Vaughn continued to persuade him, those who come out of the elite training camp are all talents trained by the Navy. As long as you graduate, the lowest rank you'll get is a captain. If he performs exceptionally well, becoming a colonel directly, or even a major general, is not impossible. It would be such a shame to miss such a great opportunity. Upon hearing this, Bai Ye was taken aback. Before Vaughn could continue, he immediately said, "You're right, I'll pack my things now." After saying that, she turned around and went back to her room to pack her luggage. Vaughn was left completely bewildered. What did I say right this time? The key to Bai Ye changing her mind was the change in her identity. It is true that as long as you are strong enough, you don't have to worry about not being valued. However, according to the normal procedure, Byakuya wanted to rise from lieutenant to fleet admiral. It will take a long time. But if Byakuya came from the Marine Headquarters elite training camp, it would be a different story. This is equivalent to plating it with gold. He became a person with impeccable revolutionary credentials. Furthermore, the elite training camp allows for the early recruitment of many future elite naval officers. This is also very important for achieving the ultimate goal. It's fair to say that Inigamo's invitation was like a godsend, delivered just when you're about to fall asleep. The sooner we enter the new world, the sooner we can meet the powerful figures standing at the top of the ocean. Then it'll all come down to who uses what. On the vast, boundless sea, a small boat drifts alone. Bai Ye sat at the bow of the ship, sighing with some frustration. Why didn't I take someone knowledgeable in navigation with me when I left? Those selected to participate in the elite training camp need to first gather in Logue Town. So Bai Ye embarked on a voyage for this purpose. It's been 2 days since we left Ski Island, and Bai Ye feels like he's just standing still. The nautical chart in my hand is like a piece of waste paper. Fortunately, this is only the 4 seas, if it were the Grand Line. Even Bai Ye couldn't guarantee that with his current strength, he could survive the terrifying natural disaster. Host, Bai Ye. Template, One Punch Man, Saitama. Fusion degree, 2%. World source power, 18. Fusion level 2%, 3%, requires 20 world source power. To open the exchange shop, you need to spend 100 world source points. Looking at his existing attribute panel with utter boredom, Bai Ye felt that he still had a long way to go. I'm still 2 points short of world source power. If only I could get some one-piece stuff. Bai Ye thought to himself. Perhaps heaven heard Bai Ye's wish. Not far away, a medium-sized ship flying the skull and crossbones flag was sailing towards where Bai Ye was. A pirate spotted White Knight's small boat and immediately reported it loudly. Beautiful Captain Alvida, a small boat has been spotted ahead. Should we take care of it? Is that so? A bloated figure appeared at the bow of the ship, speaking menacingly. We're short-handed on board, let's rush up and tie that guy up. Overwhelmed with excitement, the fat on Alvida's ugly face trembled uncontrollably. The small boat ahead, full speed ahead. At this point, Bai Ye had already resigned herself to fate. We can either wait for the right person, or drift along with the waves. Anyway, there are still more than half a month until the meeting time. Lying on the boat, legs crossed, gazing up at the sky. He looked completely relaxed and content. Just then, the sound of a ship cutting through the waves reached Bai Ye's ears. Bai Ye's eyes lit up, and he quickly looked in the direction of the sound. A pirate flag, with a skull and a red heart, and a swan-shaped prow. Why does it look so familiar? Then a thought flashed through Bai Ye's mind, this is a character from an anime. Alvida Pirates. The Alvida Pirates were the first pirate crew Luffy encountered after setting sail. Captain Alvida is an ugly, fat woman. She looks a bit like a smaller version of an older woman. Luffy and Kobe also met through the Alvida Pirates. At this point in time, Luffy should still be at sea for more than a year before he sets sail. That's why Byakuya was able to encounter the Alvida Pirates. This was the first time Bai Ye had ever encountered a character from an anime. He can finally experience how much benefit changing plot points can bring. Bai Ye moved and vanished from the ship. When the White Knight reappeared, it was already on Alvida's ship. Looking at the little brat in front of him, with his cherry blossom pink mushroom haircut, holding a broom in both hands, and looking like a wronged little devil. If I'm not mistaken, this should be Kobe, right? Kobe suddenly heard someone speaking behind him, turned around abruptly, only to find that it was someone he didn't recognize at all. Terrified, she stumbled backward, fell to the ground, covered her head with her hands, and cried out, "Who are you? Please don't hurt me. I'm just a poor servant." Bai Ye chuckled, just like in the anime, "You're a coward." "Who's the coward?" Kobe buried his head in his chest and argued defiantly. However, his constant trembling betrayed him completely. "Don't be afraid. My name is Bai Ye, and I'm a Navy officer." Navy. Upon hearing the word Navy, Kobe immediately stood up excitedly. "Are you really in the Navy? Otherwise what?" Kobe, pulling Bai Ye along, excitedly said, "Marine Captain, I'm reporting." Kobe recounted everything he had seen and heard on the ship. "Don't worry, I'll handle these pirates. Now let's talk about your problem. After I take care of these pirates, are you heading home? Or?" Without the slightest hesitation, Kobe immediately replied, "I'm ready to follow you into the Navy." "Are you sure?" "Of course, becoming a Navy officer is my lifelong dream." Ding! Congratulations, host, for successfully altering the plot. Kobe's chance encounter with Luffy, Garp takes Kobe as his apprentice, etc., and you have gained 50 points of world source power. Chapter 11. Under Alvida's orders, they continued to approach the small boat where White Knight had been. But when they got closer, there wasn't a single person on the boat. "Beautiful Captain Alvida, there's no one on board," the pirate hurriedly reported. Alvida was taken aback, and asked in confusion, "How could this be? Did they abandon ship as soon as they saw us?" Just as everyone was wondering, a slightly teasing voice suddenly came from inside the cabin. "Are you looking for me?" Bai Ye pushed open the door and came out, followed by the timid and submissive Kobe. When Byakuya saw Alvida, his expression changed drastically, his eyes twitched uncontrollably, and he struggled to suppress the urge to vomit. I didn't expect the real person to be even more exaggerated than the anime. There was no way around it, Alvida was really suffering without the smooth fruit. Alvida became wary upon seeing the sudden appearance of the White Knight. "Who are you? Weren't you looking for me just now?" Bai Ye reached into his robes, as if searching for something. This action immediately terrified Alvida and her pirate crew. Thinking Bai Ye was looking for a weapon, they immediately pointed all the knives in their hands at Bai Ye. Even Alvida's large, fleshy hands were gripping the thick, thigh-sized spiked club tightly. She sensed an extremely strong sense of danger emanating from Bai Ye. It was as if an invisible hand had gripped her neck, suffocating her. Upon seeing everyone's reaction, Bai Ye looked up and smiled, his handsome face as warm as a boy next door. "I'm just holding a strip of cloth, don't be nervous." Bai Ye took out a light blue strip of cloth from his pocket and blindfolded himself. Almost everyone was puzzled by Bai Ye's actions. They had never seen anyone blindfold themselves before the battle. "Brother Bai, what do you mean by this?" Kobe was also dumbfounded at this point. "It's nothing, I'm just afraid that when we start fighting, I'll feel like throwing up looking at that ugly, fat face." Bai Ye said calmly, then took out a pair of white gloves from the system space and put them on. The gloves are 2/3 the length of the forearm, similar to Saitama gloves. While it's satisfying to punch an enemy to pieces, the feeling of blood sticking to your hands is somewhat unpleasant. So this time, Bai Ye was smarter. Before leaving, he spent 2 million berries to order 10 pairs of white gloves. Made from the skin of sea monsters, it possesses sufficient toughness and elasticity. It can also prevent blood from seeping into and coming into contact with the skin. This perfectly meets Bai Ye's current needs. "Hey kid, who are you calling ugly?" Alvida's already ugly face became even more grotesque and unbearable. "Men, get him. I'm going to twist this guy's head off." At Alvida's command, nearly 100 of her men reluctantly swarmed forward. Upon seeing this, Kobe instinctively closed his eyes, afraid of witnessing a scene of carnage. But then, Bai Ye's undeniable voice rang out. "Open your eyes. If you want to become a qualified naval soldier and can't even accept a scene like this, you might as well go back to being an ordinary person." Kobe cautiously opened his eyes a crack, only to witness a scene he would never forget. Despite the onslaught of numerous pirates, Byakuya advanced instead of retreating. A long sword gleaming with a cold light came slashing down, but Bai Ye dodged to the side and punched it through the chest with his backhand. Blood splattered everywhere, and a few drops even landed on Kobe's face. With a single punch, a fierce gust of wind shot out in a straight line, piercing through more than a dozen pirates. Blood and flesh flew everywhere, and corpses littered the ground. Kobe murmured, "Are all the navy this powerful?" Byakuya's brutal attack instantly subdued the remaining pirates. Even Alvida herself was stunned, almost dropping her spiked club. Fear swept through everyone's heart like a raging storm. This disparity in strength is enough to instill despair in anyone. For every step Bai Ye took forward, the other pirates took 2 steps back. Seeing this, Bai Ye laughed, "Since you won't take the initiative to attack, then I will." That seemingly sunny smile reveals a different kind of coldness. It sent chills down everyone's spines. Before he could finish speaking, several screams rang out in succession. Those pirates vanished without a trace, as if they had evaporated into thin air. Alvida's entire body was trembling, and her legs felt like they were made of lead, unable to move an inch. Since she set sail, she has taken dozens of lives. But this scene, which resembled a living hell, terrified her. In a short time, only 3 people remained alive on the entire ship. White Knight, Kobe, Alvida. White Knight deliberately left Alvida until the very end. Of course, this is not because Bai Ye has any special fetishes. After all, in the original storyline, Alvida and Kobe are both named characters in the anime. So Bai Ye wanted to conduct an experiment. That means sparing one and killing one, and seeing which method can obtain more world source power. Unfortunately, Alvida was the one chosen to be killed. If anyone's to blame, it's only because she hasn't eaten the smooth fruit yet. Alvida swung her spiked club desperately, only in this way could she gain a sliver of security. The enormous spiked club, carrying a powerful gust of wind, slammed down on Bai Ye. Bang! Without the slightest hesitation, Bai Ye punched the club in half, then punched Alvida back into the furnace for a second. I hope she'll be reborn with a more normal appearance. The system notification sounded again. Gain 0.01 points of world source power. Gain 0.02 points of world source power. Gain 0.01 points of world source power. Gain 1 point of world source power. Ding! Congratulations, host, for defeating Alvida. You have successfully changed the storyline to Alvida fights Luffy. According to Alvida teams up with the Buggy Pirates, etc., world source power, 30 points. 30 points, which is significantly less than Kobe's 50 points. However, in the anime, Alvida's role is much smaller than Kobe's. So it's understandable. Bai Ye untied the pale blue cloth strip, along with the white gloves that were already stained with blood, and threw them onto the ship. Upon encountering the Alvida pirates, Byakuya directly gained 82 points of world source power. This can be considered a bumper harvest. Host, Bai Ye. Template, One Punch Man, Saitama. Fusion degree, 2%. World source power, 100. Fusion level 2%, 3%, requires 20 world source power. To open the exchange shop, you need to spend 100 world source points. For it. Looking at the system panel, Bai Ye was once again in a dilemma. Exactly 100 points of world source power. That's enough to unlock the exchange shop. However, it can also improve several aspects of integration. After much hesitation, Bai Ye still chose to increase the fusion level. After all, every increase in fusion level brings about a dramatic change in Bai Ye's strength. Moreover, there was one thing Bai Ye originally intended to try. If it goes smoothly, then the world's source power that Bai Ye gains will be enormous. But if things don't go smoothly, then Bai Ye will need enough power to help herself escape. Chapter 12. Looking at the available world source power, Bai Ye gritted his teeth and reluctantly spent 60 points of world source power. Fusion level 2%, 3%, requires 20 world source power. Fusion level 3%, 4%, requires 40 world source power. The existing system panel is as follows. Host, Bai Ye. Template, One Punch Man, Saitama. Fusion rate, 4%. World source power, 40. Fusion level 4%, 5%, requires 80 world source power. To open the exchange shop, you need to spend 100 world source points. Bai Ye clenched his fist, feeling the immense power surging within his body. This feeling is so intense that it can completely immerse you in it, making it impossible to pull yourself away. They looted all of Alvida's pirate crew's wealth and took some dry food and fresh water with them. Bai Ye then took Kobe back to his original small boat. After all, Alvida's ship was badly damaged in the battle. The deck was in a terrible state, it would probably take 2 people a lot of work to clean it up. Back on the ship, Bai Ye realized that he might have acted too quickly. No navigator was left to guide the way. Looking at Kobe beside him, Bai Ye asked with some annoyance, "Kobe, can you read a nautical chart?" After taking the nautical chart, Kobe frowned and said quite seriously, "I've learned a little about this before. The nautical charts for the East Daxia Sea should still be correct." Bai Ye breathed a sigh of relief and said, "That's good. Now, how far are we from Logue Town?" "It's estimated to be another 10 days' journey." 10 days? When I left, they told me it only takes 8 days to get from Skiphall Island to Logue Town, didn't they? After hearing this, Kobe began to carefully search for the location of Scythia Island on the map. He then said, "If I'm not mistaken, you started in the wrong direction." "Damn it! So, what's the nearest island we're on now?" "It's an island of windmills and oranges." A glint flashed in Bai Ye's eyes, as if he could see the world's source power and the adorable Nami beckoning to him. "No, Nami isn't even an adult yet. That's too wicked. I have to get rid of this evil thought. Let's go to Windmill and Orange Island then." With Kobe, who was practically a navigator, Byakuya's voyage went much more smoothly from then on. In less than half a day, we successfully arrived at Kakosia village. Bai Ye jumped off the ship and said to Kobe, "You stay on the ship and don't wander off." Stepping onto the soft sand, feeling the warm sunshine. It must be said that the environment in the world of One Piece is quite good. After walking along the forest path for a short while, Bai Ye came across the village of Kakosia. And in the village, there are those several fishman buildings with a very distinctive style. Bai Ye smiled, his eyes narrowing, "My world's source power, come and wait for daddy's favor." Just as Bai Ye was preparing to charge directly towards the fishman base, a clear and melodious sound suddenly came from not far behind. "Hey! Who are you, and what are you doing in our village?" That voice, it sounds familiar. When Bai Ye turned around, the first thing that caught her eye was a head of orange hair and a fair and lovely face. Those bright eyes stared straight at Bai Ye, without the slightest fear. There is also a tattoo on his exposed left shoulder. If Bai Ye wasn't mistaken, this person who suddenly appeared before him, it should be Nami, the navigator of the Straw Hat Pirates. What a coincidence! Bai Ye was sizing up Nami, and Nami was also sizing up Bai Ye. Nami had just buried the stolen money when she emerged from the forest and saw Byakuya. When they saw that Bai Ye was trying to enter Kokoyasi village, they quickly spoke up to stop him. After all, the village is the domain of the fishmen. If the fishmen saw a strange face appear, they would probably kill this guy immediately. Nami then advised, "You should leave this island as soon as possible, it's very dangerous in the village." Byakuya knew that Nami was kind-hearted and meant well for him, which was why she advised him to leave. However, what Nami saw as danger meant nothing to him. Bai Ye laughed, "Don't worry, I know what I'm doing." When Nami saw Byakuya's handsome face and warm smile, her face flushed slightly, and her voice involuntarily lowered. But the village is really dangerous." Looking at the somewhat shy Nami, Bai Ye thought to himself, "Actually, I'm in more danger than them. By the way, who exactly are you, and how did you come to our village?" Bai Ye said nonchalantly, "I'm a marine. I heard there are pirates causing trouble here, so I came." When Nami heard that Byakuya was a marine, her expression turned grim. It was precisely because of the Navy's inaction that the dragon was able to dominate Kokoyasi Island for so many years. This made Nami's impression of the Navy not very good. However, when Nami heard that Byakuya was there to deal with the Arlong pirates, she was stunned for a moment, the chill dissipated, and disbelief appeared in her beautiful eyes. "You just said, lead the way. Every second you waste is torture for you and for the villagers. Are you going alone? It would be very dangerous for you to go alone. I'm very strong. You can take me with you without worry." For some reason, Nami, in a daze, led Byakuya to the fishman's house. Perhaps it was Bai Ye's gentle smile and the confidence in his words that made Nami subconsciously believe what he said. Half an hour later, the two stood at the entrance of the Arlong pirates' lair. Nami only then realized what she had done. She didn't want Bai Ye to die in vain. Even though Byakuya was a navy officer she despised. But from Bai Ye's incredibly confident words, Nami felt a long-lost sense of hope. For Nami, any chance to eliminate the Arlong pirates is a must. She wouldn't hesitate for a moment, even at the cost of her life. After hesitating for a while, Nami asked, "Since you dared to take down the Arlong pirates all by yourself, you must be very strong, right? And you must hold a very high position in the Navy, right? In the Navy, the stronger you are, the higher your rank, this is common knowledge at sea." Bai Ye didn't directly answer, "Is this where the Arlong pirates are staying?" Nami nodded subconsciously. "That's enough." After putting on gloves, Bai Ye braced himself against the wall with one hand and suddenly exerted force. Spiderweb-like cracks covered the wall for hundreds of meters. Before Nami's horrified eyes, the wall collapsed with a deafening roar, the sound echoing throughout the entire village of Kokoyashi. This attracted numerous villagers who came out to see what had happened. They were especially worried when they discovered the sound was coming from the direction of the Arlong pirates. They were afraid that the Arlong pirates would attack the villagers again. Bai Ye stepped over the ruins of the wall and said calmly, "My name is Bai Ye, and my current rank is Navy Lieutenant." Nami stared at Byakuya, who had already disappeared from sight, her delicate face filled with confusion. When did a naval lieutenant become this strong? Chapter 13. The dragon was reclining in a deck chair, his hands clasped behind his head, lazily basking in the sun, pondering how long it would take to return to the Grand Line. "We must prove to the world that humans are inferior beings compared to fishmen." Chu and Chloe were lying on the sofa, basking in the sun, looking relaxed and carefree. The entire fishman house. A loud boom shattered the peaceful atmosphere. Startled, Chu and Chloe stood up. Along also sat up, his brows furrowed, his eyes filled with murderous intent as he stared at the collapsed section of the wall. The air seemed to freeze at that moment. Tap! 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 Clear footsteps echoed through the smoke, reaching everyone's ears, and an invisible sense of oppression filled the entire space. "They've come with ill intentions." With a wave of his hand, all the mermen who had been resting picked up their weapons and lay in ambush nearby. A moment later, a black figure emerged from the smoke. Chu and Krubi, both officers of the Arlong pirates, exchanged a glance without hesitation. They rushed into the smoke from the left and right, trying to strike first. Snap! A crisp sound of bone cracking came from the smoke, and the fishmen around looked relieved. In their view, the two cotters working together would surely be able to kill the attackers. Along's furrowed brows gradually calmed down, but a trace of doubt still lingered in his heart. The next moment, the footsteps sounded again, but this time it put Along on high alert. Because this time, the footsteps were still coming from only one person. When the smoke cleared, Bai Ye appeared unharmed before everyone, with the corpses of Chu and Korobi lying at her feet. The two fishmen's heads and necks were at almost a 90-degree angle. It is clear that the spine was forcibly broken. When Along noticed this, he felt even more terrified. This means that the enemy in front of them eliminated both Krubi and Chuyu in an instant. Only in this way can the sound of bone cracking be explained. The enemy is exceptionally powerful. "You lowly, damned human! How dare you kill a great fish man? Lowly humans? A piece of trash like you, who fled from the Grand Line, can only bully ordinary people with no strength in the weakest part of the East Blue. When you were captured by Admiral Kizaru, why didn't you call him a lowly human? If Jinbe hadn't chosen to become one of the 7 warlords of the sea, a scumbag like you, no, a piece of trash like you, should be waiting to die and impel down." Upon hearing this, Along's muscles tensed instantly, and he unconsciously gripped the cleaver in his hand even tighter. He hadn't expected that the mysterious person who had appeared before him would know his origins. He also mentioned the shame of his life, Kizaru. That incredibly powerful man, with a single, casual strike, severely injured himself, forcing him to be captured by humans. This was the deepest shame in his heart. Arlong asked nervously, "Who exactly are you? Are you also from the Grand Line?" Bai Ye laughed, "Guess." Without wasting any more words with Bai Ye, Along immediately ordered all the fishmen to attack. Seeing this, Bai Ye secretly pondered whether he should also train a group of subordinates. Otherwise, doing everything yourself every time not only lacks sophistication but is also quite tiring. While pondering, Bai Ye casually dodged the attack of numerous fishmen. A series of afterimages flashed by, and Bai Ye and Along drew ever closer. To Along's utter horror, it appeared before him. "No matter who you are, today I will make you pay for Chu and Chloe's deaths. Die!" Along roared, trying to bolster his courage, and drew his sword from behind him to strike first. "Shut up! Bai Ye unleashed a punch, which, with a piercing whooshing sound, directly blasted the airborne blade into a V shape. Along's hands were torn open by the immense force, blood staining his arms, and he was sent flying backward, crashing into the wall. Looking at the completely destroyed blade, Along stammered, how is this possible? This weapon, crafted with the finest metals from Fishman Island and forged by master blacksmiths, was destroyed by a single punch. Bai Ye said in surprise, "Hey, I didn't expect that one punch wouldn't kill you." Although it was just a casual punch, Along was able to withstand it and survive, which was indeed somewhat beyond his expectations. Along leaned against the wall, barely managing to stand up. His hands twitched uncontrollably from the excruciating pain, and he had no strength left. "Who exactly are you? You must be from the Grand Line, right? There couldn't possibly be someone this strong in the East Blue." Bai Ye laughed, "Guess. You." Along was already seriously injured by Bai Ye's punch, and Bai Ye's anger made him vomit blood and almost die on the spot. Nami, who was peeking from a distance, watched as the incredibly powerful Arlong was like a child in front of Byakuya, completely powerless to fight back. Her heart was filled with excitement. Kokoyashi village had finally ushered in the light. Seeing Bai Ye's actions that nearly drove Along to his death, her big eyes curved into crescents, and she almost burst out laughing. Hearing the commotion at the fishman's house, Kokoyashi village police chief Kensuke rushed over to check the situation. When Kensuke arrived, he saw Nami crouching in the corner like a kitten, secretly watching something. So he asked her in a low voice, "Nami, what on earth happened here? Have these fishmen gone mad again? These damned merfolk will destroy Kokoyashi village sooner or later." Nami turned to Kensuke, whose face was full of worry, and shared her joy, saying happily, "Uncle Kensuke, Kokoyashi village is saved. We won't have to suffer under Arlong pirates anymore." "What?" Kensuke asked in shock and disbelief. "You mean you've already raised 100 million berries and redeemed Kokoyashi village from the Arlong pirates?" "Of course not, I'm still short quite a few berries." Nami then realized something and asked, somewhat puzzled, "Hey? Uncle Kensuke, how did you know I needed to collect 100 million berries?" Kensuke said awkwardly, "Ahem, actually everyone knows about this, but I didn't want to put too much pressure on you, so I didn't tell you." "You guys, never mind, anyway, from today onwards, the history of Kokoyashi village will be rewritten." As she spoke, Nami showed Kensuke what was happening inside the fishman's house. This sight startled Kensuke, his eyes widened, his mouth gaped open, and he stammered, that young man, beat Along to death." Seeing Kensuke's surprised expression, Nami couldn't help but chuckle, "Isn't he amazing? Did you bring him? Do you know him?" Nami said happily, "Yeah, I picked him up on the beach. He said he was a naval lieutenant, specifically sent to deal with Arlong." "Found on the beach? A naval lieutenant? And he could kill Arlong?" Kensuke stared blankly. Is this even possible?" Chapter 14. Until his death, only the phrase "guess what?" kept echoing in Along's mind. Yet they still didn't know the true identity of the enemy before them. After Arlong was dealt with, the surrounding fishmen looked at Bai Ye as if they were seeing a demon. Forget about avenging Along, they were all itching to use all three legs at once, fearing that Bai Ye would make a move against them next. Escape. Run. Boss Along and the others are all dead. So one by one, the fishmen, as if possessed, plunged into the pool that connected to the sea. In the sea, she swam with all her might, trying to escape that terrifying man. As for thoughts like revenge, he never even considered them. Seeing the fishmen flee in panic, Bai Ye didn't rush to attack. He pondered, "I don't seem to see Octopus Hachi. He must have taken that manatee to feed, right? What a lucky lad. It's fine if we don't run into Xiao Bie, but if we do, Bai Ye won't hold back. Although Xiao Bai didn't commit as many evil deeds as other fishmen, his hands were still stained with the blood of innocent villagers. Moreover, he also enjoyed the resources that the Arlong pirates plundered from the villagers, so even if he was killed, he wouldn't be able to complain. Nami slowly walked in and saw the bodies of Chu and Krubi lying at her feet, and Arlong, who had already died, not far away. The stench of blood in the air constantly assaulted Nami's senses. A feeling I'd never experienced before welled up inside me. Is it finally over? Has the pressure that has plagued Kokoyasi village and weighed on me for 10 years vanished today? Nami murmured, her beautiful eyes glazed over. Bai Ye laughed, it's not completely over yet. What do you mean? Nami asked, looking puzzled. Bai Ye raised his right leg, twisted his waist, and suddenly exerted force, slamming his right foot down. In an instant, an unparalleled power surged to the ground. Under Bai Ye's precise control, the power only covered the area of the Murloc's lair. The ground began to tremble violently, and the houses on the surface collapsed with a roar. The tower that imprisoned Nami for 10 years was also reduced to nothing. Nami looked at the ruins of the fishman's house, a hint of relief flashing across her face. A smile played on her lips, but 2 clear tears slid down her cheeks. At this moment, she was truly free from all constraints. At the same time, the sea water turned crimson, with countless pieces of flesh and blood floating on it. The scene was extremely bloody and terrifying. These are clearly the fishmen who escaped into the sea earlier. However, due to the force of Bai Ye's kick, they were all shattered into minced meat in the sea. Bai Ye calmly took off his gloves and casually tossed them onto Along's dead body. Bai Ye reached out and wiped away Nami's tears. Now, it's truly over. Nami raised her beautiful face, her smile captivating, her bright eyes staring intently at the man before her. That already incredibly handsome face gained an even more captivating radiance at this moment. At this moment, Bai Ye heard the system notifications echoing in his mind, and a satisfied smile appeared on his face. Seeing the smile on Bai Ye's face, Nami's cheeks flushed, and she murmured, Can I come with you? Don't get me wrong. I just want to draw nautical charts of the entire world. This is my lifelong dream. After saying these words, Nami buried her head in her chest, her 2 small, fair ears as red as crystals. But after a long while, Nami still hadn't received a response. Looking up, she saw that Bai Ye hadn't heard her at all. His expression remained unchanged, still beaming with joy. The shyness on her face vanished instantly, and she began to sulk. Of course, Bai Ye had no time to care about what was happening around him at that moment. Instead, they were completely absorbed in the pleasant notification sounds of the system. Gained 1.5 points of world source power. Gained 1.8 points of world source power. Gained 0.08 points of world source power. Gained 0.05 points of world source power. Gain 5 points of world source power. This is so awesome. Fishmen are generally much stronger than ordinary pirates. Therefore, the harvest of the world's source power was also extremely abundant. Destroying the Arlong pirates alone yielded 12 points of reward. The settlement of events later will bring another large sum of money. This trip to Kokoyasi village was absolutely fantastic. When Byakuya snapped out of his reverie about his bountiful harvest, he saw Nami's puffed-up face, which looked like a steamed bun. What's wrong? Did something happen again? Nami forced out 2 words through clenched teeth, I'm fine. The 2 little tiger teeth were grinding together, making a clicking sound. Nami blushed as she recalled what had just happened. Bai Ye noticed Nami's strange expression but didn't think much of it. Instead, he started to reflect, feeling that something was missing this time. For example, something that should have happened didn't. It seems the story is incomplete. When Nami saw Bai Ye frown again, she knew that Bai Ye hadn't heard what she said at all. She was so angry that she kept kicking and stomping her feet on the ground. What exactly is missing? Why hasn't the settlement been completed yet? Just then, a clear whistle sounded from outside. Bai Ye immediately recognized the whistle as belonging to the navy. Da-da-da. A series of hurried footsteps could be heard from the outside. Judging from the sound, there is a group of nearly 100 people. Bai Ye's eyes lit up as he looked at the lewd figure walking in from outside the door. That's right, so you were the one we were missing. That's right, in the anime, along with the Arlong pirates, the captain of the 16th Marine Division was also wiped out. Colonel Rat. If it weren't for Colonel Rat colluding with the Arlong pirates. Given the crimes committed by the Arlong pirates, if reported to the higher levels of the Navy, it would certainly attract the attention of the higher UPS. It shouldn't have led to the current situation. The Arlong pirates have been able to run rampant here for over a decade, and Kokoyasi village has suffered for more than 10 years. As soon as Colonel Rat and his men entered, they were shocked by the horrific scene inside. Whether it was the lifeless Chu and Kruby lying at his feet. Not far away, Along, broken in two, stood with a face full of panic. Or perhaps it's a pool of crimson flesh and blood floating on the surface of a 10-meter deep pool. Everything confirmed one terrifying thing. The Arlong pirates were wiped out. The one who did it was probably the calm-looking man standing there, his strength must be terrifying. However, Colonel Rat had his own plans. With a wave of his hand, he gave the order. All of you, get them. Surround them. Upon seeing this, Nami immediately shouted in protest, "We're not pirates. We're not pirates. The pirates have all been killed by Byakuya, he was a marine too." Chapter 15. Although Nami despised the Navy's inaction, after meeting Byakuya, Nami's views on the Navy began to change somewhat. Upon hearing that Bai Ye was also a naval officer, Colonel Mouse became wary. He didn't come here to avenge Along. All the money Along has earned over the years by exploiting the common people under his command. A portion was given to Colonel Rat as hush money to keep him from being reported. We can keep everything else. Colonel Rat saw that the Arlong pirates were in trouble this time. They came here with the intention of seizing all the assets of the Arlong pirates. You're in the Navy too? Colonel Mouse asked suspiciously. Bai Ye indifferently pulled out his identification and tossed it to Colonel Mouse. Colonel Rat was amazed by Bai Ye's composure and his ability to single-handedly defeat the Arlong pirates. He must be a colonel or major general from headquarters. Colonel Mouse took the identification without even glancing at it, immediately put on a fawning smile, and hurriedly dismissed the surrounding soldiers. It's all a misunderstanding. I thought it was a pirate feud. If the man in front of him really was a brigadier general or major general of his unit. If Colonel Rat's affair with Along were discovered, he would face certain death. How could the Rat Colonel not be afraid? Nami was also completely baffled by Colonel Rat's chameleon-like behavior. Logically speaking, isn't a colonel higher in rank than a lieutenant? This Rat Colonel really did react to Bai Ye like a mouse seeing a cat. I'm terrified. Bai Ye slowly walked up to Colonel Rat, grabbed him by the collar with one hand, and lifted him up. Colonel Mouse was like a dehydrated turtle, flailing his arms and legs, trying to break free of his restraints. Hey! What are you doing? Put down our commander right now. Put down the officer. Or we'll shoot. Let go. When the surrounding naval soldiers saw their officer being led away, they all panicked. Sir, what are you doing? Colonel Rat continued to argue. I haven't done anything illegal. I'm a naval captain. Bai Ye narrowed his eyes and said coldly, so you know you're a naval captain? Along revealed everything about you before he died. This meaningful remark sent a chill down the spine of Colonel Mouse. For a moment, even the struggle was forgotten. Colonel Rat knew he was doomed. However, he still wanted to put up one last act of resistance before he died. He's not a marine, he's a notorious pirate. Shoot him! Kill him! Colonel Mouse screamed with all his might. Bang bang bang! Nearly 100 guns simultaneously unleashed dazzling flashes of light, bullets surging towards Bai Ye like a torrent. You all brought this on yourselves. A terrifying killing intent erupted from Bai Ye, and he swiftly threw Colonel Rat into the hail of bullets. Colonel Rat didn't even last 3 seconds before being riddled with bullets. Their deaths were gruesome and unbearable to witness. Bai Ye appeared beside Nami in a flash, wrapping his arm around her slender waist. Nami exclaimed in surprise. The two of them took to the air. The naval adjutant immediately ordered his soldiers to continue firing at Byakuya and Nami in the sky. Nearly 100 naval soldiers had just turned their guns upwards, preparing for a second salvo. Too slow. Bai Ye said calmly. At this moment, Bai Ye's expression became extremely serious, his sculpted face revealing an indescribable determination. A tremendous force coursed through his body, ultimately concentrating entirely on his right fist. That powerful and violent force, like a storm, swirled around Bai Ye and soared into the sky. With a single punch, it seemed as if even heaven and earth were suppressed within it. A fist-shaped imprint, large enough to cover an area of several miles,